I'm going to begin by cutting to the chase. As an industry is worth $200 billion globally. ELT in Ireland is embedded in the international education, estimated 2.38 billion euros. And MEI, Marketing English in Ireland, who are the marketing overseers of, in a March report on the sector to the government, estimated that English language teaching is worth somewhere in the region of 800 million to the Irish economy per annum. So it's a highly lucrative sector. However, starting in 2014 and leading about up to language schools, or ELTOs as they're commonly referred to, English language teaching organisations, closed their doors overnight. One year was particularly acute, 2015 to 2016. Schools in the Republic of Ireland closed their doors. They left students without courses, they left teachers without jobs, teachers without payment, and teachers without any legal recourse for redundancy from the schools themselves. And as a teacher, as Joan told you, I've been in the business for 30 years. As a teacher who has never had that indignity inflicted upon me, I found it horrifying. I found it outrageous. I found it unjust. And I decided that I wanted to delve into what research had been done at academic level in this country to see what teachers actually thought of English language teaching work conditions in privately run schools here. So as I started to delve, I found that there was a real dearth of material here in Ireland. A lot of research has been done on teacher identity and teaching roles as we perform in our active teacher role in classrooms, within the four walls of the classroom. And while research had been conducted in other countries like Australia, Poland, the UK, the USA, Canada, on teacher work conditions as teachers perceived it to be, there seemed to be very little to nothing done here in Ireland, and that's when I decided to and look at academically what kind of evidence was there. Because one thing that I found in ELTOs that had hitherto been anecdotal, and suddenly these issues were on the record, and suddenly ELT teacher voice was being heard in the media, which was really for the first time. So I decided that I wanted to undertake research to get baseline concrete data to support these. So that's a little bit of the background of my story. So I decided to undertake a mixed methods study, which involved an online survey that garnered 81 valid responses from ELT teachers around the country. And I conducted focus group interviews with 24 ELT who were either actively working in privately run schools here in Ireland or who had had experience of working in schools here in Ireland. And what I was looking at that teachers used to describe their roles and how their workplace conditions kind of inspired these roles that they felt they were fulfilling. It was kind of fivefold. Firstly, we spend lives as teachers in the classroom, particularly as senior teachers and particularly with higher level students, looking at idiomatic language. Now, Justin is going to talk about idioms later on, and I'm really looking forward to that because idiomatic language is great, and English is a very idiomatic language. So things like phrasal verbs, we spend so much of our time focusing on this. I was quite interested to see how this would come up in the teacher's language. But secondly, metaphors resort to linguistically when we're trying to make sense of a world that is chaotic. And particularly if you're feeling disempowered, you will resort to metaphor to help you to make sense of things when they don't make sense. So I was looking at the roles that teachers portrayed of themselves in terms of their work conditions and in comparison with others. And so I'd like to share with you some of the roles of teachers themselves. And this is the first one. Now, this should come as no surprise because the teacher as backpacker ELT role has been around for decades. It has actually circulated since the 19th century. James Joyce himself was identified as a backpacker teacher. But ELT teachers to denigrate, to denounce, to be pejorative, to other us as somehow lesser and different to our primary school and secondary school counterparts. And it portrays somebody really historically who is feckless. ELT as a means of kind of funding their travel exploits. And this has persisted for decades. Surveyed respondents indeed admitted that they had worked abroad. 22 of my 24 focus group participants had also worked abroad. It's quite interesting because although they admitted for pursuing ELT initially, it was when they got abroad and started working in ELT that each and every one of them seemed to have this epiphany moment when they thought, I love this. This is my career path. This is what I want to follow. And then on return to Ireland, they pursued postgraduate qualifications like CELTA and Delta and A's and TESOL and ELT, etc. And they decided there and then to have a career path on ELT. It's also quite interesting that the majority of my survey respondents were actually in a middle-aged cohort, and this represented a much more settled, steady career type of ELT teacher. So contrary to the kind of young, feckless persisted for decades. Secondly, there were two roles in conflict or in tension with each other. Teacher as performer versus teacher as facilitator. By and large, the teacher as performer role was favoured by younger teachers and particularly younger males. In contrast, teacher as facilitator was one that was embraced by older teachers, particularly older teacher as performer role completely. A couple of other points emerged. The role that feedback forms play in contributing to the teacher as particularly for the younger male teachers. So that students are given on completion of their course where they rate their accommodation, the food, the syllabus, the curriculum, and they rate their teacher. It's based on teacher performance, and typically it's based on how much fun they had in the classroom. So for these male teachers, it was a case of positive the feedback they got on their performance in the classroom, the more inclined they were to realise this particular role. The survey also revealed that access to resources was key in whichever role you identified with. Because if you did not have access to particular types of resources, you could realise neither of these roles completely. In the survey identified basic resources as adequate, like resource books on shelves, access to a photocopier, dictionary, having a staff room that didn't double as a classroom. For the schools were lagging sadly behind in areas of technology. And this reached a head-on when COVID hit and lesson delivery moved exclusively to an online. Most teachers felt that they were really floundering and did not have adequate training and did not have adequate resources at their disposal to fulfill either of these roles fully. This is quite a new one, teacher as entrepreneur. By and large, younger teachers embraced this role wholeheartedly and were very positive towards it in attitude. They found it particularly empowering when the school that they worked in facilitated the role for them, in, for example, providing a room for them if they wanted to pursue different income streams, which would involve something outside the teaching they were doing with the students in that school. So, for example, they might teach extra English classes with students who weren't from that school, but the school was willing to provide a room for them in order to do so. They might teach yoga, or they might have done a completely different pursuit, but with the school's backing. And in this case, it is a highly empowering role for these teachers. Teacher as entrepreneur is highly consistent with the ELT as commodity metaphor. It's also consistent with the kind of self-branding and self-marketing that the gig economy has brought about as a result of COVID, especially in the online tech delivery world. So, but for me, begs the question as to why a teacher who is working full-time in a language school would feel the need to be an entrepreneur and pursue alternative income streams. And I'm going to share some stark facts with you. From my survey, the majority of my respondents reported being paid hourly. The lowest hourly rate here in Ireland. The highest was only €28 per hour. Only 12 respondents reported getting a salary. Top salary was not even €27,000. Only one respondent was clearly aware of a 3-day force majeure being clearly stated in their contract. Remember that the majority of my survey respondents cohort. However, nearly 81% of the teachers did not have any provision ever. And this demonstrated that this cohort were 1.5 times less likely so than the general population here in Ireland. Had no medical insurance. This is during a global pandemic. And most worrying, nearly 84% neither had home ownership nor a mortgage on their own home, making ELT teachers in this cohort 2.5 country. It's very concerning because of the direct link that has been found between home non-parity and ELT in Ireland, unfortunately, has been identified by Walsh as a precarious profession. So my conclusion before finishing. My survey and focus group findings reflected a highly skilled, highly qualified and highly motivated ELT teacher with a strong sense of their own professionalism, however, was not always reflected in their workplace conditions. Work conditions in many instances, it demonstrated empowerment and high self-esteem among my respondents. However, it raised integral questions on stakeholder status and what it really means to be a stakeholder in ELT here in Ireland. And have constantly said that we need proper regulation, and what we need is teacher as activists to ensure that this happens, because change happens from the roots up, not from the top down. So to this end, teachers must be directly included in and represented all government-level negotiations concerning post-pandemic recovery for the sector. So a case in point, as of next January, all workers in the Republic of Ireland will be entitled to mandatory 3 days paid sick leave. ELT teachers did not have that before January. So what it shows is that legislation always trumps good legislation to ensure that teachers have a minimum standard.